Your car starts losing power, running rough, burning more fuel, or showing a check engine light. Maybe it hesitates when you accelerate, stalls at idle, smells strange from the exhaust, or feels like it cannot breathe when you drive uphill. Now you are wondering, is the problem a bad EGR valve or a bad catalytic converter? This is where many drivers waste money. A bad EGR valve can make the engine run rough, hesitate, stall, or knock, but a clogged catalytic converter can make the car feel extremely weak, especially at higher speed or under load. If you confuse the two, you can replace expensive parts and still not fix the real problem. So in this video, I'll show you the symptoms of a bad EGR valve, the symptoms of a bad catalytic converter, how to tell the difference, what codes to look for, and what to check before replacing anything. What does the EGR valve do? The EGR valve, or exhaust gas recirculation valve, sends a small amount of exhaust gas back into the intake system so it can enter the combustion chamber again. This helps lower combustion temperature and reduce nitrogen oxide emissions. But over time, carbon buildup can make the EGR valve stick open, stick closed, or clog the EGR passages. When that happens, the engine may idle rough, stall, hesitate, ping, lose power, or trigger EGR related codes. The important thing is this: an EGR valve can fail in different ways. If the EGR valve is stuck open, too much exhaust gas enters the engine when it should not. That can cause rough idle, stalling, hesitation, hard starting, and low speed drivability problems. If the EGR valve is stuck closed or the EGR passages are clogged, the engine may run hotter during combustion. That can cause pinging or knocking under load, higher NOx emissions, and insufficient EGR flow codes. What does the catalytic converter do? The catalytic converter is part of the exhaust system. Its job is to clean harmful exhaust gases before they leave the tailpipe. Inside the converter is a honeycomb structure coated with special materials that help convert harmful gases into less harmful emissions. A catalytic converter can fail in three main ways. First, it can become clogged or restricted. This creates exhaust back pressure, which makes it hard for the engine to push exhaust out. When the engine cannot breathe properly, it loses power. Second, the internal honeycomb can break apart. When that happens, you may hear rattling under the vehicle, especially during startup or acceleration. Third, the converter can become chemically inefficient. In that case, the car may still drive normally, but it may fail emissions testing or trigger codes like P0420 or P0430. Signs of a bad EGR valve. One of the most common signs of a bad EGR valve is rough idle. If the valve is stuck open, exhaust gas can enter the intake at the wrong time. The engine may shake, stumble, or feel unstable while stopped at traffic lights. Stalling is another strong sign of an EGR valve stuck open. The engine may stall when you stop, idle low, or struggle right after startup. You may also notice hesitation or poor acceleration at low speed. The car may feel weak or delayed when you press the gas because the air and exhaust mixture is not correct. A stuck closed EGR valve or clogged EGR passage can cause pinging or knocking under load. This may happen when accelerating, climbing hills, or driving in hot conditions because combustion temperatures are too high. A bad EGR valve can also trigger a check engine light. Common EGR codes include P0400, P0401, P0402, P0403, P0404, P0405, and P0406. P0401 often points to insufficient EGR flow. P0402 points to excessive EGR flow. Circuit or position sensor codes may point to wiring, connector, or electronic valve issues. Black smoke can happen in some cases, especially if the engine is running rich or the air-fuel mixture is affected, but do not blame the EGR valve based on black smoke alone. Black smoke can also come from a dirty air filter, bad MAF or MAP sensor, leaking injectors, turbo or boost problems, fuel pressure issues, or rich fuel trims. Signs of a bad catalytic converter. One of the biggest signs of a bad catalytic converter is severe loss of power. A clogged converter restricts exhaust flow. The engine may start normally and idle okay, but when you accelerate, climb hills, or drive at highway speed, the car feels choked, slow, or unable to build power. Another clue is that the problem may get worse as the engine heats up. A restricted converter can build heat and back pressure the longer you drive. You may also notice overheating under the vehicle or a very hot exhaust smell. In some cases, the floor area may feel hotter than normal. A rotten egg or sulfur smell can also happen, but this does not always mean the converter itself is the original problem. A rich running engine, misfires, leaking injectors, bad fuel control, or a failing converter can overload the catalytic converter and create that smell. Rattling underneath the car is another strong sign. If the honeycomb inside the converter breaks apart, you may hear a metallic rattle during startup, idle, or acceleration. A bad catalytic converter can also trigger the check engine light. The most common codes are P0420 for bank 1 catalyst efficiency and P0430 for bank 2 catalyst efficiency. But do not automatically replace the converter just because you see P0420 or P0430. These codes can also be caused by exhaust leaks, misfires, rich fuel mixture, oil burning, coolant burning, lazy oxygen sensors, or fuel control problems. How to tell the difference? If the engine runs rough at idle, stalls when stopping, hesitates at low speed, or has EGR flow codes, start with the EGR system. If the vehicle feels plugged up, has severe power loss at higher RPM, struggles on hills, gets worse as it heats up, rattles underneath, or has P0420 or P0430, suspect the catalytic converter or exhaust restriction. A bad EGR valve usually affects combustion and drivability, especially at idle, low speed, or under light acceleration. A clogged catalytic converter usually affects exhaust flow. The engine feels like it cannot breathe, especially when you demand more power. The smell can help, but it is not enough by itself. Rotten egg smell may point to an overloaded or failing converter, but you still need to find out why the converter is being overloaded. Before you replace anything, do these checks first. Step 1. Scan the vehicle before clearing codes. If you see P0400 to P0406, inspect the EGR valve, EGR passages, vacuum lines if equipped, wiring, connector, and EGR position sensor. If you see P0420 or P0430, do not jump straight to replacing the catalytic converter. First check for misfire codes like P0300 to P0308, lean codes like P0171 or P0174, rich codes like P0172 or P0175, and oxygen sensor codes like P0130 to P0161. Step 2. Pay attention to when the problem happens. If the problem is rough idle, stalling, or stumbling at low speed, the EGR valve may be stuck open. If the problem is pinging under load with an EGR insufficient flow code, the EGR valve may be stuck closed, or the passages may be clogged. If the car loses power badly at higher RPM or feels worse on hills, suspect exhaust restriction. Step 3. Check for catalytic converter restriction. A mechanic can test exhaust back pressure with a back pressure gauge. A vacuum gauge can also show signs of exhaust restriction if vacuum drops as RPM is held. Some technicians also compare temperature before and after the converter or use scan tool data to look at O2 sensor behavior. Step 4. Inspect the EGR system. Carbon buildup can clog the valve or passages. On vacuum-operated systems, check the vacuum hoses and diaphragm. On electronic EGR systems, inspect the connector, wiring, and position data. Step 5. Find the cause before replacing the converter. Catalytic converters usually fail because something upstream damaged them. Misfires, rich running, oil burning, coolant leaks, bad oxygen sensor feedback, leaking injectors, and ignored engine problems can overheat or contaminate the converter. If you install a new converter without fixing the cause, the new converter can fail again quickly. How to fix a bad EGR valve. If diagnosis points to the EGR system, start by checking whether the valve is dirty, stuck, unplugged, or not receiving the correct signal. If the valve is carbon clogged, remove it and clean it with the proper EGR or carbon cleaner. Also clean the EGR passages if they are accessible, because a clean valve will not help much if the passages are still blocked. correct. Do not force delicate electronic parts or damage the valve pintle. If the EGR valve is electronically faulty, has a bad position sensor, damaged connector, failed diaphragm, or does not respond during testing, replacement may be needed. After cleaning or replacing the valve, clear the codes and test drive the vehicle. Make sure the rough idle, stalling, pinging, or EGR code does not return. How to fix a bad catalytic converter. If testing confirms the catalytic converter is clogged, melted, broken inside, or no longer efficient, replacement is usually the proper repair. Catalytic converter cleaners may help only in minor cases where there is light contamination. They cannot fix a melted, broken, or severely clogged converter. Before installing a new converter, fix the root cause. Repair misfires, rich running problems, oil burning, coolant leaks, exhaust leaks, bad fuel control, or faulty oxygen sensor data. If the converter is rattling inside, cleaning will not repair it. The broken substrate can block exhaust flow and may need replacement. If this video helped, like the video, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Also watch this next video on bad O2 sensor versus bad MAF sensor symptoms, because a bad sensor, wrong fuel mixture, or airflow problem can trigger emissions codes and even damage the catalytic converter if you do not catch it early.